Japan has started collecting water samples near Fukushima to check radioactivity levels, a day after it began discharging contaminated water. The South Korean government says it has sensed no abnormalities thus far. South Korea says the second-stage flight of North Korea's latest space launch vehicle could have been unsuccessful, countering what the regime has said. Works are currently underway with the United States to search for sunken parts. With less than a month to the Hangzhou Asian Games in China, a big sporting event for billions of people in this part of the world, we take a closer look at what to look forward to for Team Korea. It's August 25th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. We begin with the latest on the release of Fukushima wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. A day after Japan began discharging contaminated water, its Environment Ministry has started collecting seawater samples near Fukushima to check the radiation levels. For the latest, we have our Shin Ha-young on the line. Ha-young, bring us up to speed.
Well, Jung-min, Japan's Environment Ministry this morning, on what's just the second day of the wastewater release, began collecting seawater samples from 11 different locations with a radius of 50 kilometers around the Fukushima power plant. And that's according to Japanese news outlet Kyodo News, which reports that the first results of the investigation will be announced on Sunday. And the ministry will then continue to publish sample results throughout the next 3 months. And the procedure aims to determine how many radioactive materials have spread into the ocean and what the impact of that will be by measuring tritium concentration. And for the 3-kilometer sampling point, the concentration of the water should be less than 700 becquerels per liter, and for the 10-kilometer point, it should be less than 30 becquerels per liter. And if the samples exceed these levels, the discharge of wastewater will be halted. And separate from Environment Ministry, Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, also plans to gather seawater samples from 10 locations within a distance of 3 kilometers of the power plant for about a month on a daily basis, releasing the data the following day. And in fact, the first test results came out about an hour ago, and TEPCO announced that the concentration of tritium in seawater in front of the nuclear power plant was below 10 becquerels per liter, which is within the normal range.
And Ha-young, this comes amid protests from within and outside Japan. How is the Japanese government responding to this?
Right, Jung-min, there was a press conference on Thursday where Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida addressed certain issues and vowed to protect Japan's fishery industry. Let's take a listen.
The Japanese government will take all possible measures, including utilizing funds and compensation from Tokyo Electric Power Company, so that fisheries businesses will not suffer from the release of Alps-treated water into the ocean, including reputational damage.
Regarding China's ban on importing Japanese seafood, Kishida urged China to immediately lift the restriction and to have experts engage in a scientific debate on the effects of the wastewater release. That's all I have for this hour. Back to you, Jung-min.
All right, that was our Shin Ha-young joining us on the line. South Korea is among many countries that are keeping close tabs on the Fukushima water release. In its daily briefing, the government says the discharge process is going as planned thus far, but radioactivity tests on farmed seafood will be expanded. Bae Eun-ji reports.
The South Korean government confirmed Friday that the wastewater from the nuclear power plant in Fukushima is being released as originally planned. In a daily press briefing, the government said it's monitoring the situation by receiving real-time data from the Tokyo Electric Power Company, as well as via hotlines established between the two countries' regulatory and diplomatic authorities.
So far, the discharge process that began yesterday at 1 p.m. is proceeding stably as originally planned, without any sort of abnormalities.
The official stressed that the government is doing its best to make sure the discharge does not affect the health and safety of people in Korea. Addressing public concerns, the government also said it will conduct more radiation tests on its farmed seafood. Starting next week, it plans to more than double the number of tests and carry out a total of around 4,000 tests by the end of this year.
In addition to the tests that are already being carried out by the government, we will significantly expand the number of tests on farmed seafood before it's shipped through private organizations.
With South Korea's close proximity to Japan, it has been conducting radiation tests on its farmed seafood since 2011, when a powerful earthquake and tsunami destroyed the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Meanwhile, the government also explained that South Korean experts will be sent to the nuclear power plant as early as this weekend. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo earlier announced that experts will be sent to the Fukushima every 2 weeks to check if Japan is following the safety standards and to make sure it doesn't go wrong. This comes amid public fear and frustration in South Korea, with civic groups launching protests despite the government's reassurances. Peunji, Arirang News.
In other news, calling North Korea's second attempted satellite launch a clear provocation, South Korea's defense chief today raised the possibility of a failure in the second stage of the rocket, unlike what the regime has claimed earlier. Now, Seoul and Washington are carrying out search efforts to find debris from the rocket. Choi Min-jung has more.
South Korea's head of national defense denounced North Korea's second attempted satellite launch, stating that the regime had yet again seriously violated UN Security Council resolutions. Speaking to lawmakers at a session of the National Defense Committee at the National Assembly on Friday, Defense Minister Lee Jong-sop added that North Korea's nuclear weapons and missiles were the most serious threat to South Korea's national security.
This is a grave violation of UN Security Council resolutions and a clear provocation against peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and in the international community.
The Defense Ministry assessed that the second launch was carried out to make up for its first failed attempt in May. It was also believed to be an attempt to demonstrate Pyongyang's capabilities and a response to the ongoing Seoul-Washington military exercise, as well as the new trilateral cooperation agreement among South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. Contrary to North Korea's claims, the ministry revealed that it spotted an abnormality in the second stage of the rocket. Pyongyang had announced that the first and second stages ignited according to plan, while the third stage failed due to an error in the emergency blasting system. The minister added that South Korea and the U.S. have been cooperating and sharing information to carry out a search for debris following the failed launch. Lee also vowed stronger trilateral security cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo.
Through the security cooperation solidified during the trilateral summit, we will lower the risk of North Korea's provocations and further strengthen our security.
In response to the regime's latest provocation, the UN Security Council is set to convene a session on Friday. The meeting is to take place at the request of 7 member countries and South Korea. Meanwhile, the North has yet to announce the failure of the launch on domestic media, with pundits saying this could be to save face. Following the second failed attempt to put a satellite in orbit on Thursday, North Korea is set for a third launch sometime in October. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea and U.S. Navy Special Commandos on Friday held joint drills at an American military base, Camp Humphreys in Pyeongtaek, as part of their ongoing annual Ulji Freedom Shield exercise. The South Korean Navy says that the drills included special reconnaissance operations, casualty treatment, and responses to other types of emergency situations. Special warfare officers from the two countries will continue to carry out a number of training sessions through next month, such as infiltration tactics on sea and land and strike operations. Stressing a stronger relationship between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo following the Camp David summit, South Korea's ambassador to the U.S. says the three countries will work closely to respond to North Korean threats, meaning more sanctions. Shin Se-byuk with more.
The recent trilateral summit between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan has laid an unprecedentedly strong foundation for three-way cooperation that could foster ties under any circumstances. This is according to South Korean ambassador to the United States, Jo Hyun-dong, speaking in Washington on Thursday. Referring to the Seoul-Washington-Tokyo grouping as a small multilateral consultative body at the highest level, Jo stated that the three-way cooperation is more powerful than other multilateral bodies considered significant by Washington, such as the Quad and AUKUS. In particular, Jo emphasized that the agreements made during the summit, including the commitment to hold regular summits and ministerial-level meetings, are rare to find in other small multilateral pacts. During their summit at Camp David last Friday, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, U.S. President Joe Biden, and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida agreed to enhance their trilateral cooperation through a series of measures. These include annual three-way summits, as well as meetings involving defense, foreign affairs, commerce, and treasury ministers. Meanwhile, during the same briefing, South Korea's top diplomat in the U.S. condemned Pyongyang's latest failed attempt to launch a space rocket. North Korea on Thursday went ahead with a second attempt to put a spy satellite into orbit, but it failed due to an error in the emergency blasting system. To mark the recent attempt as a quote-unquote clear violation of United Nations Security Council resolutions, regardless of the outcome. He also called for preparedness to respond to any further provocations from Pyongyang. And following the failed launch, the South Korean ambassador also said South Korea, the U.S., and Japan would collaborate closely to develop a systematic response to North Korean threats, including imposing additional sanctions against the regime. 신새벽 아리랑 뉴스.
President Yoon Suk-yeol on Friday appointed Lee Dong-kwan as the new chief of the Korea Communications Commission, the nation's main broadcast watchdog, as expected, but did so without the National Assembly's confirmation report. During the hearing process, Lee, who served as the senior secretary for public affairs during the Lee Myung-bak administration, met strong opposition from the main opposition, the Democratic Party of Korea. The DP claimed that Lee has a history of suppressing the media and also brought up his son's involvement in a school bullying case, both of which Lee denies. Lee is expected to reorganize the public broadcast system and web portals as he pledged to make the country a leading global player in the media industry while fighting fake news. Former U.S. President Donald Trump surrendered at a jail in Georgia in his fourth arrest this year. He was briefly booked on 2020 election-related charges, becoming the first former U.S. president ever to have a mugshot taken. Yoon with the details.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has surrendered to law enforcement authorities for the fourth time this year. This time he surrendered to Fulton County Jail in Atlanta, Georgia on Thursday night, where he was charged over alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election in the state. But his visit to Atlanta was notably different from the three past surrenders. Rather than a courthouse, Trump was required to visit the county jail, which has a history of violence and poor conditions. And unlike in other cities that did not require him to pose for a mugshot, a booking photo of him was taken, a first in history for a former U.S. president. The booking process was brisk, merely 20 minutes, and Trump was released on a $200,000 US bond, which had him quickly heading back to the airport for his return flight home to New Jersey. He insisted once again that he did nothing wrong and called the case accusing him of subverting election results a travesty of justice. In all, the former president was in Atlanta for roughly an hour and a half. In Fulton County, unlike in other jurisdictions, arraignments generally happen after a defendant surrenders at the jail and completes the booking process, not on the same day. That means Trump may have to make another trip to Georgia in the coming weeks. And unlike his previous arrests, his indictment in Atlanta was with 18 others, including his ex-chief of staff Mark Meadows and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani. So far, a total of 12 defendants, including Trump, have surrendered, while Trump and 10 co-defendants are now out on bail. One of the co-defendants, Harrison Floyd, who heads Black Voices for Trump, remains in custody after failing to negotiate a bond agreement. The remaining 7 co-defendants have until noon Eastern Time on Friday to turn themselves in. Yoon, Arirang News.
In Johannesburg, the Brics bloc of developing nations invited 6 new members to join, including Saudi Arabia and Iran, in an apparent move against the West. On top of that, Chinese leader Xi Jinping vows for industrialization and agricultural modernization as he meets African leaders. Chung Eun-ju tells us more.
The BRICS group of emerging economies has announced the admission of 6 new members in an attempt to reshape the global world order and provide a counterweight to the U.S. and its allies. The decision was announced Thursday as South African President Cyril Ramaphosa wrapped up the annual summit of the group in Johannesburg. From the beginning of next year, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt, Argentina, and the United Arab Emirates will join the current 5 members: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This is the bloc's first expansion in 13 years. Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated the new BRICS members in a video message, adding that the bloc's global influence will continue to grow. Putin did not attend the 3-day summit in person as he faces an arrest warrant for war crimes in Ukraine issued by the International Criminal Court. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also welcomed the expansion. Chinese leader Xi Jinping described the expansion as historic. He added the bloc should accelerate the BRICS expansion process to bring more countries into the BRICS family. Xi had been the leading proponent of the admission of new members, presenting an enlarged BRICS as a way for the Global South to have a stronger voice in world affairs. President Xi Jinping said during the China-Africa dialogue, which followed the BRICS summit that concluded earlier on Thursday, that China will also provide emergency food assistance to some African nations. Beijing will help countries in Africa to expand grain cultivation and encourage Chinese companies to invest in agriculture. Food inflation has surged in Africa since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. The conflict has also caused fuel and fertilizer costs to increase, which contributed to double-digit increases in food costs from Nigeria to Ethiopia. Jeong-Eun-Ju, Arirang News.
Hyundai Motor Group's premium brand Genesis ranked first among all brands for tech innovation, with Hyundai Motor securing second place. Conducted by J.D. Power, the 2023 Tech Experience Index study revealed on Thursday its analyzed responses of new 2023 model vehicles. Genesis earned 656 points ahead of other premium brands such as Cadillac, Lexus, and BMW, marking its 3rd consecutive year as the top-ranked brand. Hyundai Motor ranked second overall with 547 points, while securing the top rank among mass-market brands for the 4th consecutive year. The Genesis GV80 and Hyundai Motors Palisade and Sonata also won TXI's Advanced Technology Award. It's Friday, and that means it's time for our weekly arts and culture segment. We have our culture correspondent Song Yujin in the studio. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jungmin.
I understand you have something different today.
That's right, Jungmin. That's because the countdown for the Hangzhou Asian Games is now on. Now, as you know, the event was supposed to take place last summer, but it was pushed back a year due to concerns over COVID-19. And yesterday, marking 30 days until the opening ceremony, the athletes of Team Korea gathered at the Jincheon National Training Center for a press event, and I had the opportunity to really listen to and take a look at how the athletes are preparing for the Games. So for this week, here are some of the standout events as well as athletes from Korea to keep an eye on next month. With the Hangzhou Asian Games less than a month away, Team Korea's athletes are giving their all at the Jincheon National Training Center. Korea's goal, placing 3rd out of 45 countries in the overall medal ranking. The country dropped from 2nd to 3rd for the first time in 24 years, swapping positions with Japan 5 years ago in Jakarta.
The national team is undergoing a generational shift. Young athletes need more time to reach their peak performance. Meanwhile, Japan made nearly tenfold more investment in sports as they prepared for the Tokyo Olympics, but I think we've narrowed the gap a lot.
Hopes are high for the nation's swimmers. The Korean Olympic Committee predicts 6 gold in swimming, the most for any sport, led by 2-time world championship medalist Hwang Sun-woo. Also in the spotlight is Kim Woo-min, who ranked 5th in the men's 400-meter freestyle and was the fastest Asian in the 800 meters at last month's World Championships in Fukuoka.
It's my first Asian Games, so I want to really impress people on my debut. I want to enjoy every bit of it, even the pressure.
Korea is also known for its archery and fencing. Kim Woo-jin is the reigning men's individual archery champion. Women's épée fencer Song Se-ra clinched victory in both the individual and team finals during last year's Cairo World Championships. Saber fencer Koo Bon-gil is aiming to secure a fourth consecutive individual and a third team champion title, which would make him the most decorated Asian Games medalist from Korea.
Korean athletes are great at individual events, but I think we're stronger as a group. Our teamwork truly shines thanks to our exceptional communication.
There are exciting firsts, too. Breakdancing and esports are making their Asian Games debuts as official events.
Through competitions known as battles, we've been introducing Korea to the global dance scene. As we make our way into the world of sports, we're feeling more pride and responsibility and are pushing ourselves harder.
So, as the road to Hangzhou draws closer, Team Korea is gearing up to bring some joy and excitement to those at home.
You know, Team Korea seems to be ready to go.
You're right, Jong-min. So while at the press event yesterday, I could really feel the anticipation and how much dedicated the athletes are to really show their best performance next month in Hangzhou, especially after the lower than expected performance in Jakarta 5 years ago. And actually, during the press conference yesterday, the head of the Jincheon National Training Center told us reporters that to really motivate and to boost the athletes' morale, they've reinstated the early morning exercises every day as well as bi-weekly hiking sessions as well. And what's more, it was kind of shocking for us, but the center is even disconnecting Wi-Fi from midnight to 5 a.m. to make sure athletes rest without any distractions. So we'll have to see whether such rigorous and intensive training pays off next month.
It'll pay off. And tell us more about the Hangzhou Asian Games. It's a big sporting event here in Asia. When the event will kick off and how many athletes will participate?
You're right, Chong-min. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's one of the biggest sporting events in Asia. So to talk about the opening ceremony, the official games will start off on September 23rd, 8 p.m. China time. That is when the opening ceremony to take place. And what's special about this year's games is that a record number of 12,005 athletes from 45 countries will be competing in 40 sports. And as for Team Korea, South Korea is sending over 860 athletes in 39 sports. And the competition venues, it will take place across 6 cities, including Hangzhou in China's Zhejiang province on the east coast. And I'm really thrilled to share that I'll be going to Hangzhou next month to cover the opening ceremony, as well as to really show you the overall atmosphere of the game. So please stay tuned.
Can't wait. Thanks, Yoon.
Thank you.
Most of the rain has subsided tonight. For Seoul, sunny skies will make a return tomorrow. Highs will be hovering around 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, which is in the similar range. Keep in mind that sensible temperatures will feel close to 33 degrees. In the meantime, for the East Coast and parts of the South, brief showers are expected for Sunday. Heat wave alerts are issued for many regions, including parts of Gyeonggi-do, Chungcheong-do, and Jeollado provinces as well. Chances are very high that they will be expanded to further parts of inland regions tomorrow. With a rise in overall readings, intense UV rays will sweep across the country. UV ray index will stand in the high range nationwide. The peak hours for sun's UV radiation are in between 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Make sure to avoid outdoor activities during these hours. Morning lows will be a couple degrees lower than today, and some regions may even see wide temperature gaps. Seoul will be starting off at 22 degrees. And sunny skies will dominate nationwide. Seoul and Chuncheon will peak at 30, Daejeon 31, Daegu and Gyeongju will be topping out at 32 degrees. Next week, the entire nation will see frequent showers and temperatures will also take a steep dive. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.